All right. It is our final discussion, so I'm glad to have all you guys on. I'm going to jump into prayer really quick and would love to. I've got questions and things I'd love to chat about. So, Lord, I just thank you for just wrapping up 30 days of intentionally trying to listen to your voice, listening to your leading, and just that activity of like being quick to respond. And for the ways that you are speaking, the way you're encouraging, the way we're learning to trust you to speak, to hear your voice, and to act. So, Lord, I pray that you would just guide our final discussion and bring things to light that might help us as we kind of phase out of this, but actually so that the things that you might be wanting to tell us along the journey, that we'll be able to learn from each other and hold on to those things and carry them with us. In your name, amen. Okay. So before we jump into like specific questions that I have, I'd love to hear if anybody has thoughts from like particular like exciting moments from this week or thoughts, like anything that's on your heart to share. And then if nothing specific comes to mind, I will ask.
Mm,
Anyone?
I'm eating my lunch. I'm sorry, but I will share
So
that.
is Darla. Please eat. It's okay.
I will share that. I am super excited. Actually, my adult daughter, I had gotten her this book for Christmas. It's like a mini retreat,
Mhm.
um, and it's called "Set the World on Fire." Well, I didn't know if she'd even started it or was interested in reading it,
Mhm.
and then um, her um, one of her spiritual directors is a good friend of mine.
Mhm.
And she reached out to me. She texted me and said, "Hey, Audrey reached out and had some specific questions for me. She's doing some retreat." And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't know she was doing a retreat." I go, "Wait a second. Maybe she's doing that book I gave her for Christmas."
Oh my gosh.
No, she was. So I called her and I asked her about it. I was like, "Oh, how is that?" And tell me about reaching out to Olga. And she said, "Yeah, one of the challenges was to reach out to your spiritual director." So I asked her how the study was going, and she said
Mhm.
it's really good. So I ordered the book for myself, which I should have done from the beginning, right?
As I say.
But it just, I thought it was more geared towards young, like,
Mhm.
you know, but no, this is like really great. So I reached out to a whole group of moms at our school, and I've got 12 other ladies doing this with me, and they all, and one this morning was like, "Thank you for planting this seed." She literally used those words. And she said, "I'm now asking my husband to reach out to our son and my son-in-law and a group of guys to see what they can do." You know,
That's
so it was
mm,
really
Wonderful.
you use that word. I have my call today. I have a story to share.
that's so exciting. Which actually leads me to one of my kind of thoughts is that with Gretchen Rubin wrote a book, and one of the things I'd love to actually do, she's written a couple books, but one of them was the Happiness Project, which to me really ties into this. And I actually want to take a group through the idea of happiness. And then she had a follow up to that because then she went through this kind of stunt journal happiness project of like, what are the things that make you happy, and how do we respond to that? She practiced them and then kind of journaled as she did it. Um, and it's interesting because I feel like in the church, we've had kind of an interesting take on happiness, and we understand that God uses our sorrow and struggle as well. And there's this idea of dying to self, but maybe we've emphasized that so much we forget that God's also a good father who wired us to be happy. And so I don't think we always know how to process happiness. So that's been something I've kind of wanted to dive into. And I actually think it would have made, I felt like I was supposed to do this first, but originally I was thinking I'd like to do the happiness project first and then follow up with this because it's implementing so many of the principles. So anyways, her follow-up book to that though was I forget the name of it, but the four tendencies is what it was. And she talked about like people go, well, how did you just decide to do something and then change your life and do it? Like, you followed through with that. Like everybody's not motivated that way, right? And then she really kind of broke people down into like four quadrants of how they're motivated, which was super interesting. And I won't go into all of them, but some people are more like rebellious, so they want to go against the crowd. And again, this is something I think would be super fun for the ministry to do, because all of these actually can deal with, if you have children, how do I understand how they're motivated? And then, like, if they're a rebel, instead of having them rebel against Jesus, how do I actually show them the real fight so that they have an enemy to rebel against instead of rebelling against you and the Lord, right? So to kind of understand these internal motivations and how people are wired, and then to understand from my parenting perspective, or relating with other people, how do we use that? But one of the things I talked about was some people are motivated internally. So it's just a matter of like, I make a decision and I stick with it, which is how Gretchen Rubin, the author, is. But others really need more external community motivation. So, and I'm more that way. So for me, part of what comes out of this happiness project is that I might do it by myself and do the right thing. When I make a decision to do it, I might stick with it. However, this is why people join Weight Watchers and things, because there's something different about when we do things in community. And I know that I'm much more motivated to do things for other people than I am for myself. So there's a lot of things that if I know I need something, I can find someone else who needs that in their life. And if I do it for them, it'll help hold me accountable. Right. So for you, here you're like, let's do the thing. What if we do it in community? I don't know that you need that motivation. I don't think you're that as much that way, but other people are. So all of a sudden, when we do something for other people and we do a group thing like this, suddenly I'm much more motivated and accountable because we're all doing it together, and it's fun to do it together. So, which goes back to the happiness thing. Part of what she says, ways to boost your happiness, is anticipation of a thing. Also follow up afterwards. So, and doing it in community. So there's all these steps. So one of our things that I kind of found coming out in this was sometimes the unselfish act, like there's a lot of spur of the moment kinds of things. And in the past, and what I hear usually talked about when people do this is that spur of the moment, like I saw the person on the street and I did something for them, right? But for me, I'm noticing a lot of the things that were coming up for me were more like God's nudging me to do something, to say yes to planning something that might happen in the future. So it wasn't always an immediate like gratification kind of a thing. But one of the things, we're taking this mission trip, but then coming out of it, we've been wanting to do a informational gathering where they come and we share about what's going on. And so I just have had this push from the Lord, like it's time to get that on the calendar. So I sent out the email to Abigail, who's in charge, going, hey, let's do that informational thing. So we're going to do it when we get back, which will be great because we're just coming off and we'll have all these testimonies and things. But then when you look at the idea of happiness and service, for one, I'm hearing God speak or nudge, or however I hear him, that push, like it's time to do this now. So, but it's not an instant thing. I reached out and did an unselfish act for her. It was more like I reached out and started communication. We're going to plan an event that's going to take planning. I mean, it's like a whole thing, but it actually is going to boost joy and anticipation and happiness as we're looking forward to it. And then because we're coming off a mission trip, that event itself will increase our happiness because we'll be telling the stories and looking back and being able to like that reminiscing and then sharing with others. So it's really interesting how all these unselfish acts, if you kind of look at them in terms of planting seeds and in terms of happiness, some of these things I'm realizing it's not always the spur of the moment. Sometimes it's that long-term approach that I'm setting balls in motion that keep things going. So this 30 days gets the ball rolling of listening to the Lord, but sometimes it's long-term dominoes that he's wanting to put in effect. And then these things like catch momentum. Does that make sense? That was a lot of connecting a lot of dots that have been in my head.
I'd like to know what the name of Monica's book was.
It's called Set the World on Fire.
Set the
World on Fire. This is actually it's about the female doctors of the church. So this is what it looks like.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm Catholic, and these are all female doctors in the Catholic Church that, had just profound impact on shaping the beliefs in the church and just faith in general, doing very small little things, planting little seeds, actually. So it's very appropriate.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wrote it down. I'm like, that sounds really good. I'm glad you had it to show us. Okay. Does anybody else have any random thoughts to share about their week or other moments that were really great before I ask a few questions? Darla, it looked like you took yourself off mute, but I don't know if you're about to share or not.
Yeah, just I kind of found myself kind of true to my nature, liking the things that, the unselfish acts or kindness that are kind of anonymous
Mm-hmm.
or where I'm not really as face to face with people. You know, things like sending out some Valentines, and I've worked on a couple of knitted items to take with us to
Mm-hmm.
hopefully bless somebody with. But that's kind of where my comfort zone is.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, though, I mean, the one time I did step out that didn't really get received, I think you and I talked about that quite the way I had maybe hoped. And I realized that doing it that way for me was more about my expectation of the result, right? Than
Mm-hmm.
just planting the seed and trusting that, I had done something kind, and how the recipient, received it was kind of on them, right?
Right.
So, but yeah,
Did
kind of like
you
the
feel
hidden.
the Lord pushing you out of your comfort zone to do things less anonymously ever? Just curious.
Um, well, the one time I did was the time it didn't really go as I envisioned it,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think just kind of, with my kind of personality, that kind of, shut that down for me a little bit
Hmm.
early on.
Uh-huh.
And I fell back into the place where I was the most comfortable.
Sure. Well, and I'll be curious to see because our little mission trip here is going to be you serving in a way that's not super anonymous. So it'll be interesting to see. But I also I think often the Lord, I think sometimes He wants us to know we're worthy of being seen. And sometimes it's hard to step into that place. I think there are others who are so comfortable being seen that He's like, how about you just store up those treasures in heaven and you set aside the need to be recognized now, right? So I think sometimes He pushes us to go in a direction that's maybe a little out of our normal comfort zone. And there's benefit in both, right? Okay. I'm so you've already kind of mentioned, but I'm just, um, did anyone notice being more aware because of the intentionality of this, of God's like speaking or nudging or just really feeling led by Him in a way that was more? Did anyone this 30 days, did that increase any for you or was it about the same?
Hmm.
I think I was more aware, but then questioning, is this me trying to, project something, or am I being nudged to do
Mhm.
something?
And I think that's a really good question. And I think when I've been in that place many, many times, but I've often had people encourage me, like, we believe that God is a good father and He speaks. So when you have a nudge and you're looking for it, let's operate on the assumption that it is God answering our prayers, instead of, because I think so many times, like the James talks about, right, believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea. So I would like, Lord, I want you to speak. I have faith that you're speaking. Da, da, da. And then every time it comes, like, I don't know, was that you? And it's almost like I can snuff out things, but sometimes you can also stir stuff into existence that's just emotionalism or whatever. So I understand you can fan things into flame and anything into flame, and you can snuff anything out. But again, as I'm starting the day with intentionality, asking the Lord to speak, when I feel like He does, I'm trying myself, because I've been such a skeptic, to do a better job of nurturing the seeds of faith. Like, I'm going to trust that that's you, Lord. You have the freedom not to speak. You have the freedom to shut out any voice that isn't yours. But I started the day asking for your voice. I got this little nudge, this thought, this whatever. And then I think sometimes writing down, I did this and then what happened, sometimes that helps encourage, like, oh, that really did play out a certain way. So maybe this really was your perfect timing. Like our putting the Thrive thing together, I felt like there was a now moment to reach back out and do it. And all of a sudden, she was already going to be in Dallas. The timing seems perfect. We're coming off our things. And it was just so like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, I do really feel like the Lord was putting a rush on me to do it. And I feel like because I'm paying attention, like, oh, I'm seeing the dots connect in a way that feels like it has the breath of God on it. Right. So sometimes I think because we're actually paying attention to the results, rather than that being about getting my strokes on the back, sometimes it is about paying attention that I felt this thing. And then here's the confirmation that it was the Lord speaking, not because I'm getting accolades, but because I see the results of the timing. Did anyone feel that paying attention to the results, like how did that, was it more about you feeling encouraged or that God was speaking, or more that you felt good about what you did? Or how did the paying attention to results affect you? Anybody?
This may seem crazy. I'm kind of programmed to not think about the results, just to, if it's on my heart and I feel like the Lord wants me to do it, just do it. And you delight if something good comes from it, but if not, press on. Do you know that maybe I have low expectations, other than I'm concerned with what I do more than people's responses. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I was thinking, for me, it's been just being focused in, and even though every day, you try to listen to the Lord and do what he wants you to do, but with the 30-day thing and thinking, you just focus a little more. And I think it helps. I'm probably better at the listening than the doing part. Some people are great doers and don't listen so well. It's like, whoa, oh, you didn't want me to do that, Lord, after they've done 30 things that day. So I think doing this with friends helps my energy. And don't pass up opportunities. And because sometimes you look back and you think, oh, I missed that window of doing that, and that was on my heart, which I think means it was on the Lord's heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, a little bit all over the chart there.
Well, and I think to your point, and that's one of the things, one of our calls, we really wrestled with the idea of expectations and like releasing that.
Uh-huh.
And yet, I have a dear friend who did this with me the first time, and she refused to tell us what she did. She's like, the Lord says not to let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. I don't want to share. I don't want to talk about that. We can talk a little about the project, but she has a very, she even called me as I was going through this. Like, I support you. I love you. I know your heart, but I still have concerns about this project altogether because of the whole response thing. And I really appreciate her thoughtfulness on that. And that's partly why I wanted to change the language from, it's not about doing an unselfish act so much as it is planting seeds. And then the focus then is on the results of being obedient to the Lord, not so much how they responded. Because I know that can really put a wrong response. And that's an interesting thing to hear people
like that.
struggle with the whole, like, and that's what I was saying, like, for me, paying attention to the response may not be, sometimes it's more about just confirmation that, oh, I really do think that was, if I'm questioning if the Lord is speaking, sometimes writing down the response helps confirm that he really was. But sometimes I did plant the right seed and they didn't receive it well, and that is still on them. So their response isn't always indicative of whether or not I was being obedient to the Lord, right? Sometimes, I know we talked about this the other day, somebody gave me a prophetic word, first time anybody had ever done that. And what she said irritated me. It provoked me. And I knew it had to be the Lord because I didn't know what to do with it. It was the oddest thing. And it wouldn't have made sense to anybody else. It didn't make sense to me. And that's why it was infuriating. I wanted practical help. And it was a like relational thing. And I was like, I need to know what to do with my life. And you're telling me like, I just want to hang out with you. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? It was so frustrating, but I knew that had to be the Lord, but I'm sure my response was a little odd to her because I wasn't like, wow, thanks for that. It's been 25 years and I'm still wrestle with that thing that she shared for me that had to be the Lord. Nothing that simple could have been that provocative otherwise. So sometimes the things of the Lord are, they prick us in ways, and other times they encourage us, but sometimes he gives us a nail file and sometimes he gives us a fluffy pillow. It's not always, but both can be a gift, right? So I wrestle with some of that, and I have wrestled with the language of this experiment, and yet that was kind of the one that was given to us. And again, I've tweaked it a little bit, but because I really don't want I don't want the focus to be on how everyone responds. Although sometimes if we start paying attention to that, we realize like, wow, I did feel better as I was doing these things, even if they didn't respond, the thought of doing it in the anticipation. And sometimes it's, wow, I was really excited and they didn't, which means maybe I still have wrong motives, or, you know what I mean? The whole thing can be revealing. And then we have to go to the Lord with those responses and go, am I getting your lessons? And that's partly when I have these calls. Am I hearing what you want me to hear from this experience, Lord? Because sometimes I'm focused on my thoughts about it rather than like, what do I want to glean every gift from something, right? So, and I loved your thing about listeners and doers. I think so often, one of the things I've realized, and I tend to be more of the listener and not the doer. So this helps push me into that. But on the other hand, I've watched a lot of people who go about doing, and as somebody said, you can end up with a lot of Ishmaels in the world. Isaac went about and did something in response to a word from the Lord instead of waiting and asking. He heard what the promise of a son. He didn't ask how it was going to happen necessarily. So, or when. I mean, maybe he knew how, but he didn't know when. He kind of filled in some gaps and he ends up with an Ishmael. I think there was still a blessing of promise over any of his seed, any of his sons. But yet, sometimes the Lord's saying, I don't want you to scatter your seed in some places, only certain places. And so this is that listening to the Lord, because we don't want a bunch of Ishmaels running around, because there's been contention ever since Ishmael and Isaac and all of their descendants. There's always been contention there. Had he waited, the whole world as we know it would be a very different place now. So I think it is a very good point to be cautious about, sometimes we get into the doing so much. And I like that this really challenges me. And I will admit, I didn't always do such a good job of that. I had this heart mindset about it, but a lot of times I kind of like, oh gosh, I need to check off the box and do something today. Instead of asking the Lord, like, or it's easy to look back on my day. And this is an interesting thing, to look back on my day and say, what unselfish things did I do? As I'm recording, I mean, I tried to ask the Lord in the morning, but sometimes nothing specific stood out. But then I look back over my day and was like, Paul was saying, like, I'm looking for anything that can be credited to your account. I think sometimes I look back over my day and go, what can I credit to my account? Like, what did I do? And, even in that, because I'm paying attention, I realize, okay, I did 15 things today. And all of them, I think, really, if I have the right heart, were kind of for someone else. Sometimes I'm doing it out of duty. But again, I think doing this project helps me shift my awareness so that I'm not just doing it out of responsibility, but I'm doing it out of responsibility for someone else. But Lord, can you help me to do it willingly with the right heart, so that it is an act of love and generosity, so that I am sowing seeds, not just responsibility? Because really the difference there is not the action, it's the heart. So even in that, I think we look back over our day and sometimes we can ask God to retrofit some things, like, Lord, let my heart have been right. Let these be to your glory,
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else kind of have that experience of looking back?
I can really identify with that. Yeah.
And God's outside of time. So I think it is totally fair to look back over it and say, Lord, take my day and make it an offering to you. Like, maybe I did the right thing. I didn't have the right motive, but can you go back and change my heart? I'm now asking you outside of time to go back and fix the things, make that an unselfish seed that you will water, anyways. All right. We talked a little, were there any other just moments of disappointment that anybody struggled with in doing this? No? Okay. What were some of the highlights? Well, let me ask this first. Was this project was it a help or a burden, all in all? Because it's one more thing to the plate. And a lot of people don't want to do it because they have so much going on. It's hard to think of adding something. So looking back, do you feel like it was the added burden that you thought it might be, or was it like a help in some way?
Well, I think it was a help in that it raised my awareness of, kind of thinking of your day and how to, get out of yourself a little bit and go through your routine, but maybe with the lens of, what can I do today that can have some sort of an impact on somebody else, instead of just get through Darla's to-do list and work day, right? And I think doing it, at 30, and there were days that, I didn't do anything on the list or what, but just to try and get in the habit of changing my mindset a little bit. And the repetition of the daily expectation kind of helps with that. Try and build a good habit of, it might not be something I do every day, but am I going to be a little bit more aware when I'm in line at the grocery store, or, see somebody struggling with their debit card to pay for their groceries, and, am I going to be irritated or, intervene to offer to help? And so I think that was good for me, just the the routine and looking, being a little more aware of my surroundings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. I wasn't necessarily cognizant, looking every day for these opportunities. But I think for me, in looking back, it was great for me to recognize where I missed the opportunity. And then also it was an opportunity for me to congratulate myself on the things I did act on, and just kind of motivate myself to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think so often I start out with this idea of I don't have time or energy for these things or money. Like I'll have ideas of I want to send a book and I want to do this and it's like I can so often think I don't have the resources. And I think I'm always surprised that I have never once come up short because I bought a few extra books for someone or mailed a few extra cards or made an extra meal. Like I have never once given in this thing extra above what I normally do and been come up short because of it. He always gives back. I've never run out of energy. In fact, I usually find that the more I give to other people, it becomes exciting and I start getting more energy because I did for people. And suddenly there's more resources available. I think people who exercise a lot can feel like that. They feel like they don't have the energy to do it. And then once you do it, you find you have more energy than you started with. So I think this is similar. So often as we sow into other people, we sow, but then we reap in our own selves. And I think that's what I realized, that the enemy keeps us from doing things for other people because he tells us you don't have enough of something to do what you need to do for someone else. And then as we do it, we find that was a lie, that God totally gave back, not just to them, but to us, everything we gave. So it's multiplied. And so I think so often if I'm lacking a resource, and I've heard a lot of pastors and people just talking like, if you're struggling financially, go sow a little bit. You don't have to sow like crazy, but go give into a ministry. Go, if you're lacking energy, go find someone else to do something for. Like do whatever it is that you are struggling in often. And it doesn't have to be that you don't have any money, so you give $10,000 to something. No. But just plant a seed, right? A forest is contained in a seed. You don't have to plant a forest, you plant a seed. So sometimes just taking that act of faith and saying, I'm going to plant a seed into this area where I'm struggling. So often I find that the Lord gives back with multiples. We plant a seed, he gives a forest. So, and not just to them, but to us as well. So I find that super interesting. Every time I do this, I'm encouraged, like, there's always enough for the things he's calling me to do. So I don't know if that was something anybody else experienced, but for me, that's always kind of something that comes to the forefront. I think the other thing, like for me, is like you guys mentioned, awareness. Like I start looking more people in the eye and those things. But the other thing I think is just such an attitude shift, because I'm looking for someone to do something unselfish for. So the moment someone asks me for a favor, so often I can be like, bah, and not because I don't want to do it, but because it wasn't my idea. If it's my idea, I could be really excited. But if they ask me first, I'm like, well, it's such a burden. I've got, but the moment I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, great. Now you're doing me a favor because I needed to do something for somebody today. So it's amazing how much it shifts my response to other people asking me for favors. And for nothing else, that alone, that shift so that I do the thing I would have done before out of obligation, and it shifts it so that I do it with a joyful heart. Like that is worth its weight in gold. Yeah. That's been a big thing. The
Lord loves a cheerful giver. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm just like, I have to remind myself sometimes, oh, right. Be cheerful. Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things, so often I'm looking for these momentary, and I kind of said this earlier, but I think what I'm seeing is some of the things that I was led to do this time are more like long-term kinds of things, like planning events in the future, getting involved in certain things. It's more of a setting up meetings with people and not knowing where it may lead. But like we got to know a woman this month who works for this organization, and spent a little time with her. And the next thing you know, suddenly I'm doing horse lessons for kids who've come out of different kind of really difficult situations. And, all these things kind of came from it. But the first thing I did was, let's just meet. she's also saying, and then she's had all kinds of stuff. So I've been pulling all nighters, like sewing things for her stuff and her projects. Like it's turned into a whole thing. But then she's like, actually, your organization and the help that you're doing with the horses, she's going to try to get a grant and bring some money in to help reimburse, which would be amazing because then I would actually get some reimbursement for the things I'm doing. So that would mean I would have more resources of my time to give to the kids she's doing stuff with, right? I didn't go into any of this with that, but I think what I'm saying is sometimes it's a momentum and a long term. I've got a meeting tomorrow with someone with the youth at the church, and I don't really know. Really, the idea is like, how can I maybe come alongside and serve them? But it really may end up being that it ends up being a momentum boost for my ministry as well, right? So like, I don't do it for that. I'm doing it to see how we can help them. But I think so often just the planting the seeds of meeting people, finding out what their need is, and then is there a way that we can help serve it with Thrive? Like they need to raise awareness. Okay, here's your need. How can we help serve it? But then there's these dominoes that just start to happen. But I think it's a lot of what I'm being led into is that push to get the ball rolling on longer term things, not just short term. I saw someone, I gave the homeless person a coat. I haven't had as many of those, probably just because I'm working from home more and I'm not out and about driving around town as much. So a lot of the things, though, the pushes that I felt weren't those immediate gratification kind of things. A lot of my things this time were much more long-term seeds, planting seeds. Also, like we've been praying every morning for 30 days, concurrently with this, for our Thrive mission trip that we leave on Thursday. And so even that kind of a thing, like you don't see the benefit of it, but it does, there is a different energy and going in and it's helping prepare our hearts for this trip. And we'll never see all the benefits of those prayers. But yet every morning for 15 minutes or more, we've been praying over that trip. So I think, again, the focus on results is kind of an interesting one because some of the kinds of seeds we will not see. Anyways, that being said, I know Darla's got to get back and we're running a little bit longer than our normal 30 minutes. Does anyone else have anything they want to wrap up with? I appreciate everyone doing this with us so much.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. And I know there's been a lot more people online that couldn't make them noon calls. So maybe if we do this again, we can find a better call time for everybody. But I appreciate it, Monica. It's so good to have you. Thanks for joining in. And the one other thing I wanted to ask, and Monica, I don't know if you've had a chance to read any of the journal that kind of went along with this. Did you have a chance to pour over any of that? I was curious if there's anything from here that
I did read the first couple of entries, and just kind of the premise of the 30
okay
project. I haven't really delved into the journal. No.
Okay, no worries. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to your book.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see you in East Texas soon.
Yes.
When you get back.
Oh, okay. So put March 14th on your calendar because we're having that informational meeting about our mission trip where they're coming and doing a whole thing. So would love for you to come, bring Audrey or bring whoever. But it's going to be, would love to have you there for.
Is it to talk about like another mission trip?
Well, they're going to talk about the ministry and what they do. So there's all kinds of things. I mean, yes, they've got multiple trips and I would love for you to go on one with me, but also, there's all kinds of ways to help get involved or support what they do. And people that know missionaries can often send them to one of the retreats to encourage them. So your church may have missionaries and things that might be a way to partner your church with because they're serving missionaries all over the world. So I just think it might be really cool for anybody who has a heart for missions, missionaries, anything, come hear about what they do and see if there's, I don't know what may come of it, but there's all kinds of cool stuff. So,
Yay,
all right.
well,
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.